I'm Simon Hartzell, and this is NAI Global's Diving into Commercial Real Estate.
This is NAI Global's Diving into Commercial Real Estate. Today's episode is up-and-coming new talent with our guest, Jake Guso. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you, Simon. Happy to be here.
Great. Let me give a little background on Jake. He serves as an associate at NAI Miami's Commercial Real Estate Services, based out of Miami, Florida. Spent 4 years studying at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., earned a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in finance. Thereafter, returned to Miami, where he immediately immersed himself into the commercial real estate industry. He's been responsible for leasing and management close to 300 multifamily units, over 500,000 square feet of retail, and served to underwrite multiple income producing properties. Jake specializes in retail landlord representation, multifamily investment sales, and we're very fortunate to have him join us today to give a fresh perspective on the commercial real estate industry. Again, thanks for joining us, Jake. Tell us a little bit about your background, obviously, besides what I've read here. Give us a little bit more overview and in-depth on what brought you into the commercial real estate field.
Sure. So, born and raised in Miami. Like you mentioned, I spent 4 years up in D.C. studying business administration. I concentrated in finance. I used to think I wanted to be a banker, and I was always into valuations. I thought I was going to be up in New York with you guys, but on Wall Street, doing M&A work or taking companies public. I always seemed to, lean towards transactional work and, like I said, valuations. I was fortunate enough this summer going into my senior year to get a job with a local investor here in Miami that had a pretty significant income producing portfolio. It was a buy and hold operation. I managed a condo there for the majority of the summer and was fortunate enough to get a full-time job upon graduating in 2017. And then, like you said, my primary role was acquisitions, leasing, and management of a retail and multifamily portfolio. I kind of found my niche in transactional work there, doing the leasing, and sold an apartment building for them, and decided to go full-time brokerage after that.
Nice. And what really gravitated or attracted you to retail landlord rep, multifamily investment sales?
So retail landlord rep is because that was I like to say my bread and butter when I was working for the investor here in Miami. It was about 500,000 square feet of retail space. I always had a couple of vacancies. I was always doing leases, showing properties. I enjoy meeting people, and I like putting a deal together. My previous boss he was a real tough negotiator, tough to please, really set a high standard. And, I was always very fulfilled whenever we were able to get a deal done. We were always adding value to our tenants. He had great shopping centers, and we always felt that their businesses were going to succeed. And, I always got the, pat on the back from the boss whenever we got a deal done. We got to do some pretty sizable deals while I was there with him. Then towards the end of my tenure with him, we sold 29 units up in Victoria Park. That was kind of a mess of a property that a partner of his owned separate from any of our entities. It was pretty hairy and took us about 90 days to actually get it closed once the buyer went hard. That's when I was, I said, this is what's for me. I want to do transactions. I think it's, a business where obviously your income has no ceiling, so long as, I believe, you work hard, you have the potential to do as well as you can. There's no one stopping you. So I like it. There's no safety net, but there's also no ceiling.
Yeah, good point. No safety nets, no ceiling. I like that. Did you see opportunity within the retail space because of its point in the cycle and there being more runway and opportunity? How did you think when you kind of look at it from an overall industry?
Here in Miami, what I'm generally leasing is B-class properties. I tend to stay away from the really high-end stuff, on the beach or Brickell, stuff that, in my view, has got crazy rents and it's difficult for small businesses to support. In the B-class stuff, there is a good amount of vacancy here in Miami. We've seen retailers pull back a little bit. I mean, you talk to some of the tenants and they're always saying business is slow because they want to negotiate the rent. But recently we've really, been able to see proof that it's been a little slow for them, especially the mom and pop shops. Restaurants are, some of them are getting killed by the delivery services that eat into their already very small margins. So there's a good amount of vacancy and there's a lot of work for us. And, we're leasing up a good amount of spaces.
Good. Yeah. And it's you're making a point that you're finding opportunities regardless of the conditions of the market, making your own opportunities, creating those opportunities and giving yourself that if there's not a foreseeable runway, you're giving yourself the runway and capability. So I commend you for creating those opportunities.
Thank you. Yeah, we're having to do a lot more outreach. So when I started with my previous boss back in 2016 was the first time I started work for him. The phones rang off the hook whenever we had a listing up. Now we're doing much more canvassing, cold calling, trying to pull people over from other centers.
Which I think is good experience, and maybe that's a good point. When you're a newer professional within the industry trying to kind of figure out your way, it's a lot easier when things are handed to you versus rolling up your sleeves and diving in and doing the work. Right. So it's good experience. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit more about that experience and maybe if your recommendation to a new professional coming into the business, how to kind of make that transition a lot quicker, because it could take some folks months, if not even year plus, just to kind of get their business up and running. Any thoughts there?
So, advice that I always give to younger than me associates that want to get into commercial real estate, whether that be investments or brokerages, to find either a firm or a mentor that's done what you think you want to do and kind of shadow them. Again, at my previous job, I took that job because my long-term goal is to hold a portfolio of income-producing assets. I love the deal work, but long-term generational wealth is built through ownership. I don't think I'll ever stop brokering, but I tell the younger guys, learn the language. If you really like, if you like real estate, you got to learn the language, because someone will write you off immediately if you kind of sound like you don't know what you're talking about. I just got through a meeting from a prospective buyer that's supposedly going to take a 45-acre piece of land that's outside the urban development boundary and build this whole city center thing. But when we really got granular, he had no idea what he was talking about. So we wrote him off pretty quick. And I think that's something that young people deal with a lot. I try to, I don't hide my age, but I don't openly disclose it when I'm doing a transaction, because more often than not, people, you're dealing with investors and, successful landlords. They say, well, you're 23. Where's your boss? Why don't you bring in your partner or whatever? And, I think I can provide the value that they need and service that fulfills their need, as I am right now. I always lean on older brokers, but I'm confident in my ability to get the job done. So to summarize, learn the lingo, start meeting people, try to find a mentor or a firm that's, a vehicle that can transport you to where you want to go.
I think you're exactly right. Mentor is so important. Doesn't matter if you're 23 or 53. some of the most successful people still lean on that mentor type of program. And it could be a 53-year-old has a mentor that's 40, or vice versa. A 23-year-old has a 53-year-old mentor. It's somebody that can help to strategize and lead you around the obstacles and challenges that life brings you in this industry and just in life in general. So really impressed that you figured that out.
Yeah, I feel very blessed that I've been able to find now 2 firms that, care about my growth, and I think I'm able to provide value back to them. I'm willing to do whatever they put on my plate, but, they support me. I can call Jeremy Larkin, who's the broker down here, whenever I want on his cell phone. Jeremy, I've got this problem. What would you do if you were me? And he's always willing to help.
Well, how, and kind of shifting gears a little bit here, how, from a competitive advantage, would you consider you differentiate yourself?
So I always look at a deal on the investment sales side. I always look at a deal as if I'm the buyer. As I mentioned earlier, I enjoy finance. I studied it. I like valuations. I also know what it takes to manage these kinds of deals. So if I'm representing a buyer, I'm not, going on CoStar and running a report in a 3-mile radius of where he wants to be and sending him all the product available. I tend to do the research. I know what each unit is rented for. Typically, I always ask for a rent roll and financials, and then I'll send my buyer, 3, 4, 5 properties with a short analysis on the deal where I think the long-term play is. If there's a short-term play, I'll let him know what I think, and then I'll let him run with the idea. Shoot it down, run with it, buy it, whatever. But I provide a summary. I'm not, just shooting them listings and saying, figure it out. I try to provide value, and, I try to be an advisor to my clients. Mm-hmm. On the landlord rep side, sometimes it gets a little hairy because, some landlords, especially those that have smaller holdings, it's, that shopping center is their retirement or their safety net for their kids' college fund or whatever. So they tend to think occasionally that, their shopping center is A class when it might be a B or a B minus class. So you've got to kind of do some management of expectations. I never overpromise. I tend to promise the market, and I try to overdeliver. But I'm always analyzing the deal as if I'm the investor, I'm the buyer, I'm the landlord, and try to provide the most value for my client. On the management side, I've done the management, retail, multifamily, and some office, so I know how hairy it can get, and I try to shed light on some issues that might not be pertinent now, but could be issues down the road.
Perfect. Okay. Well, then kind of going into the next point, which if putting yourself in the shoes of an owner of a brokerage firm, what should employers be considering when recruiting newer talent?
I tend to answer this on the flip side, much like I answer it earlier. I usually, I'm giving advice to younger agents or investors looking to get on a path to success, whatever they determine is successful for them. On the recruitment side, it's difficult, especially for us here in Miami, because we will try to get younger agents that already have some sort of transactional experience. We tend to stay away from completely green associates, meaning, recently graduated from college, no business or real estate degree, and they just want to get into real estate brokerage. We don't really have a support team, to be honest with you, to be training new agents full time like that. So that really limits our pool. I think, great prospects for younger agents are analysts at large development firms, associates that are working with local investors, associates that are working with huge buy and hold operations that have holdings here in Miami and, might have some look at transactional work on their firm, and they want to move over into something more hands-on. They want to run the deal. They want to see the deal. They want to see it from beginning to end. They're not just analyzing it and handing it off. So I tend to tell the older brokers at my firm, the more experienced, I should say, to focus on these guys. They typically, have a great work ethic. These analysts are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, crunching numbers for their bosses, and then they don't get to see a transaction. So I think they've got a good base, most of them, and they can, kind of move laterally and apply it to transactional work. The problem that we run into is most of those guys are on salary, and now they got to take off the safety net. But I think something that's also really important is a support network. So we don't really have support for completely green brokers, but those who are seasoned and can keep up with, the lingo. They don't need to be walked through hand in hand from beginning to end in a transaction. Our firm and other firms throughout Florida are really, it's just an open environment. I can walk into anyone's office and, hey, what are you working on? I got this. What would you do if you were me? I'm looking to get in contact with this landlord because I want to represent him. Can you make an introduction? I think that's very important to young brokers.
That's a good point, because you're maybe not part of an internal team, but you're, as a company, part of a team that can work together and bounce ideas or clients off of one another, and everybody's not just out for themselves protecting their clients, and nobody knows what the other person next to them is doing. So I think you're exactly right. You need to have kind of an open business model from top down, from associate to associate, whomever it may be. So good point. Now, in regards to the company itself and industry as well, how do you feel technology impacts your business?
So I'll be honest with you, I don't use social media very much. I find myself very clear-headed when I don't have social media, so I took it off of my phone. I don't have any of the apps. I don't have any of that. And I'm focused really on my short and long-term goals. But our marketing department here is really, really good. And they're pushing us, especially the younger associates, to start using LinkedIn, use, Instagram occasionally, email blasts. And they're really focusing on providing value for free. And then eventually, somewhere down the line, you might get a transaction out of it. So we're just gearing that up now. We just started monthly email blasts that are really informational, and they're setting up some LinkedIn and Instagram posts for us. So I can't answer that question yet, but maybe if we talk in a few months, I'll have more info.
Well, it's interesting. You bring up a good point, and you're kind of relying, from what I'm hearing, you rely more on your marketing team or your department. So you're almost outsourcing it. You're not getting caught up yourself in the buzz, and it could be overwhelming as well, of social media, technology, because it's moving very quickly into the commercial real estate space. But I think You're right. I think you bring up a good point. It's moving in so quick that you can almost get yourself distracted away from your core business of adding value to your clients, building your relationship by simply picking up the phone and having a conversation versus sending an email, sending a text, sending an Instagram, whatever it may be.
Right.
You're kind of relying on the team to be able to push out useful content through technology. So that's actually an interesting point, and I think one that our listeners may want to reconsider, because again, there's such a buzz in this space of commercial real estate. Are you using this technology to track this? Or it's just something that's pretty profound, and I'm glad you actually answered the way you did, and which was honest. And it's going to be interesting to see how it impacts people's businesses moving forward.
I agree, and I'm always honest. If I don't know something, I don't use something, I'll tell you straight on, and I think that's also very important for anyone looking to get into this business.
Good. And you gave us a bunch of good insight. Let me get into a couple fun questions just to ask you, and it'll be interesting to see how your perspective is. And the first one is that you just won $100 million tax free. Where do you invest it in? Where do you invest it in commercial real estate?
I'm buying apartments in South Florida. I haven't ventured over to Texas, but what I like about South Florida and Texas and a few other states in the South is the inward migration from people in the North, retirees, wealthy people that aren't looking to pay, New York state income tax. And there's a big uptick in the retirees, like I said, down here, who might not be able to afford a house in South Florida. They're renters. My generation is majority renters. I don't have the exact statistic, but me personally, for example, I have no interest in owning a home. I'd rather keep the cash on me, keep investing it, and rent somewhere. I like the assets that, have 56 or more units, something that's got enough income to support an on-site manager. As I've managed the apartments, and you don't want to be the guy managing the actual apartments. I think they've got good scale. I mean, you think about it, just a rough number. If you've got 56 units, you can spike everyone $25 a month over a 3-year term. Multiply that by 12, drop it to your bottom line, and put a cap rate on it, and see how much value you added to your property. I like it. I think there's still a shortage here in Miami. They're building a lot, but we haven't been able to keep up with demand. And B-class, workforce housing, nothing subsidized. I've dealt with that. I like workforce, B-class, working class people, affordable housing, nothing crazy. Provide people with a safe place to live, and they'll pay you rent, and you should make a pretty good return.
Perfect. Well, you brought up a good point there in regards to the demand outweighing supply, which usually when we see markets transition or we're going through a correction, Miami's notorious for being one of those markets that's a indicator gets hit first when it's doing the correction. So it's good to hear that things are still strong and things are still moving in a favorable direction there in the market. So good to hear.
Right. In Miami,
Second
A-class
question.
stuff. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
So to answer, I just add a little bit more to what you said. In Miami, what we tend to see is the A-class, high-end luxury apartments and luxury condos. They tend to get whacked. And the really, really, how do I say this politically correctly, D-class, C-class or lower, basically, they get whacked because your tenants can't pay the rent because they likely lost their job. But if you're somewhere in the middle, B-class, white-collar workers, recent graduates, they're, not always going to have a job, but it's more likely that your tenants will be more stable in income, and they'll be able to stay in the housing that you're providing for them. And so long as you're not doing anything crazy, on the downward turn or when we're in a recession, you should hold up all right, in my view.
Perfect. And I was going to go into, so this is all good real estate points, but probably most importantly, what's your favorite food, Jake?
Anything Oriental, Japanese, Thai, Chinese. I love all that.
Nice, me too. Great. All right. Well, we are out of time. I'd like to thank Jake Guso, our guest speaker today. Jake, if anyone has any questions regarding the Miami or South Florida real estate market, how can they get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is via email. It's my first initial J, last name Guso. That's G-U, S as in Sierra, O as in Oscar, at NAIMiami.com. Happy to help any way I can. Love meeting new people. Maybe we don't get a deal, but if you're in town, we can grab beer.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Jake. And if you'd like to find out more about becoming a new NAI office, please email us at help@naiglobal.com. Thank you for listening.